Delighted to say, joined in the studio. Unusually different sportsman in this week, but genuinely really delighted to have you in. You're a busy man, I know. Thanks for popping in to see us.
Thanks very much for having me in.
You've been very busy. Latest engagement.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. But
thank you.
Obviously the career, the different aspects to your business now, fitness, nutrition, working at Mountjoy Prison. When does sleep come into the equation?
Yeah. Believe it or not, I've calculated now time-wise I probably have about 6 hours a day to live. The rest I do with other stuff, but life is good. I'm doing things I love doing, and that's very important. I'm very lucky to have a company where I have brilliant staff, self-motivated staff. Getting the season finished earlier this year, so that allows me to do other things that I'm really passionate about.
I want to bring you back a bit. We'll chat about the business ventures and bits and bobs that you do ongoing. But I want to bring you back to something which I didn't realise until I started reading up on you and doing a little bit more digging. You went on trials to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
When you were about 14. I was actually there, obviously, before you would have been there on trial at a similar type of age, 13, 14. How did that come about? I didn't even realise you played football. I just thought you were solely
GAA.
Gaelic.
Soccer was my first sport, actually, so I played soccer from the age of 7 with Ballymun United. Ballymun Town was at that stage, amalgamated to Ballymun United. And at an age, I think maybe being 11 or 12, I went down and joined Belvedere. And my level then of my technical ability went up a little bit. I had the physical ability.
Find it helped in the Gaelic to kind of coincide?
Definitely they did, yeah. So I was playing both then at that stage at school and Ballymun Kickham's. And at the age of 14, I got a trial with Nottingham Forest. Really brilliant experience. Went over, stayed in the Trent Stadium, which is the cricket ground.
Across the road.
It's like that, I think it's Heining or Carlsberg, where you wake up in the stadium.
Yeah.
You got woken up by a cricket match one morning. So it was a brilliant experience. Me and another guy from Ballymun went over. Came back and had an option of going for 1 or 2 other trials, but actually gave it up straight away and went and played GAA because I was going to school, and at that stage my club, Ballymun Kickham's, the manager was Paddy Christie, played for the Dubs, and he was looking after the lads really well. So I was going down with a massive amount of pressure on me playing soccer, with people screaming on sidelines and scouts and stuff like that. And when I went and played GAA, it was a little bit of a different environment. So I actually just gave up soccer completely then.
It was the age that wasn't it, where you kind of had to make a bit of a decision, because I would have played a little bit for Vincent's, played school by school reach. They're the enemy.
They're our rivals.
Sorry, buddy. They were a close one to the school, and there would have been a proper battle on, because soccer was my first love, but I did love watching Gaelic, watching the Dubs, playing it as well, because I felt that toughened me up for football, and I felt like then football was kind of easy then. But it was that age, wasn't it, 13, 14, where you kind of have to go one way or the other.
I was very lucky that I had a guy, as I said, Paddy Christie, understood the energy I had. I was, growing up, I had a lot of anger and aggression built up because of my brother's issues at home. And I pushed that into sport, so I developed a kind of a style, kind of a physical style that kind of worked really well in sport, whether that be GAA or whether that be soccer. Sometimes in soccer I was probably too aggressive, so it fitted well with Gaelic football.
Yeah, so was the soccer, was it ever a serious option? Like when you went over there, were you thinking this could be an opportunity, or was it suck it and see? Like I know you mentioned that maybe if the opportunity came around again 2-3 years later, you may well have grasped, or you may have made more of it at that time.
I always think back that if I had went on another trial, that I would have been more experienced. When we went over, it was actually the hottest day that England had ever recorded. It was like 36, between 36, 38 degrees. It was crazy. And we were playing a team from Mexico, kind of an all-star team from Mexico and an all-star team from America. And it was, when I look back, it was quite strange because you're playing with, they were all trialists. There was you weren't blended in with the academy. It was all trialists, guys from all over the world.
It's tough that now, isn't it?
And you're like, how can I express myself here and show you what I'm doing? And I'm sure they were judging you off your standards of your values and stuff like that, and the standards of who you are as a person. Because I remember, actually, they had this rule: you had to tuck your T-shirt in. And the head of academy was walking around checking for these little things. And I remember the coach that was looking after us came up and said, "Which one of you had your T-shirts out?" And it was me.
Was it?
And one of the Irish guys goes, it was him. I was like, gee, you little rat, like, you know. Yeah. So I said, it was me. He stuck my t-shirt back in. He said, give me 10 press-ups. So later we played that match the following day, and the guy goes to me, we weren't allowed to drink Coca-Cola. We were out having carbs, we were out having pizza. And I was like, geez, we're having pizza, but we're not allowed to drink Coca-Cola. So one of the lads, the same lad that ratted me out, had a can of Coke. And
I hope you stitched him up, is it?
I went up to the coach and said, are we allowed to drink Coke? Can I order a can of Coke? And he says, no. I said, all right, I thought we were allowed. And I just point, and your man got caught. So I was delighted to get it back to him. But it was very hard to express. It was very hard to show the capabilities. Now, they said they had recordings of me and stuff like that, but I would have liked to give another try to see how well I would have went. But the players I'm dealing with now, I deal with a lot of young players that are going over to England, and the process I'm seeing them going through, majority of them going through, not all of them, because there is a majority that are doing really well and making a career out of it, but there's a majority of them going over and really struggling coming back, and that's worrying. And I suppose when I'm looking at that, I'm kind of going, could I have went that way?
Something I'm passionate about, we speak a lot about on this show and in general, and I try and advise a lot of those younger players that are either going or not happening, and soon they become just a number and they're thrown to one side. You speak quite a lot about where you're from, Ballymun, with pride, and the route you went down and using it in the right way. The schoolboy team I played for was a club called Stella Maris down the road from Belleville. And we had 3 lads from Ballymun in the team. And I remember...
Was it Matty McManus one?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
Richie
Peter
Partridge.
Rogers, Richie Partridge was
Very
that
good,
team.
I remember watching them.
Yeah.
I would have went down with my brother to Albert College to watch them games.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So we had a proper team, like a lot of that team, like 7 or 8, 9 of us would have been in the Irish in the 15s and 16s team. But I remember, like, these lads like came in, and I was speaking about the Gaelic when I was playing that Tough From You Up. These lads came in and we signed lads from Finglas, and I remember thinking, I need to be on my game here, I need to be tough, need to be like, show that you're able to deal with this. And then we started to go on these trials. We all bonded really well, we got on great, and the parents had a really kind of good social aspect around it as well. But I always remember that their parents would say to my parents, you know, that they have to make it. They have to make it. That's their route out of Ballymun, out of the life that they've kind of been living. And I remember thinking that as a 12, 13-year-old kid, going like, what are you on about? Like, all I do is get up, go to school, play with my mates, I come back, I play in the park, I do my homework, I go to bed. Like, it was just like that. But obviously, we were training together twice a week and playing a game on a weekend. But you don't realise exactly what they're going through, even though you're
sport.
And unfortunately for those, they couldn't maximise the opportunity.
I've heard that before. Like, I've trained a couple of guys that, and they've took contracts in England that weren't really worth their value as players, and you hear that a lot. You know, well, it's better that he's out of the environment he's in, and it's a shame, because I think that's where maybe some organisation needs to step in and look at. Maybe it's the FEI steps in and says, right, okay, we need a fund out of the, you know, some pocket of finances there to actually look at the players that are going through poverty, because they need to be focused on, because if they don't make it, they're the ones that are left destroyed, absolutely destroyed. Their life is over. They are only seen as footballers. So when they come back, they're failures and they struggle with mental health, and their life is, they kind of reflect back in life and go, what was that all about? Like, why did I go that route? Why did I think I could just be that person? So it's being refined or defined, as a footballer. Like, I had a guy over from England, and he was 6'4", massive guy, and he was a centre half, and he was like, you know, the manager keeps talking about me speed, and I need to work on my speed, and I was looking at him going, and then his agent was saying to me, I need you to work on his him getting stronger and more physical, because he's so big and all. And I'm looking at this guy and he's hunched over, and I'm like, right, there's confidence issues here, right? So I says to him, let me video you. We had a talk first, went down another training session with him, and I'm looking at his mechanics, and I can see him falling forward, not activating his glutes, not getting enough knee drive. I'm like, right, there's something here. So I said to him, who are you? And first thing he starts off with is a footballer, and he talks like for about 10 minutes about football. I'm like, is that all you are? Right, are you defined as just a footballer? So I started working with him when he went back to England. He was working on going and doing other things outside the sport that made him feel better. So that when he played sport, he felt great. So he went and started feeding the homeless. He went in pre-season, he was with Reading, and when he got his testing back, he says, Philly, look at my results, the fastest player on the team. Now, a couple of weeks later, he started down loan to Millwall. But his comms, so his comms had an impact on his mechanics because he was hunched over and he wasn't able to move. So just a small thing like that had a huge impact.
A big difference. But with the GAA, in terms of the players, I know it's slightly different. It's a lot different, but with the lads going away to England and then they come back and then that, like I left at 15 and then if you didn't go at that age, you kind of probably would have missed the boat. Now it's different with the underage, the national underage teams that we've got in place now. So there's a different pathway for them, and League of Ireland is doing better now than it's done probably in the last 15 to 20 years. But with Gaelic, in terms of the authorities and lads that lose their way a little bit, is there better infrastructure in place for
there's a better network. I had an argument with my friend one day. There was a soccer club in Ballymun and there was an overlap of guys playing soccer and GAA, and they were getting to that age, as you said, that where they needed to choose which one did they go with. And I said to him, he played for the soccer club, and I said to him, they're probably better off playing Gaelic football. No disrespect to the club, no disrespect to the sport. And he says, what do you mean? I said, well, look at the amount of players on Ballymun Kickham's senior team that have degrees, that have employment, right? So they all have, majority of them have degrees. There was 2 doctors, there was 3 or 4 teachers. They were all employed. And when someone was unemployed, there was an opportunity for them to go, right, I'll link you in with somebody to get a job. And then I said, look at the soccer club and look at the education, look at the unemployment. It doesn't mean they're happy or unhappy, but in terms of career-wise, they were better off. And he was arguing. And then one day we were driving the road about 2 years later, and one of them kids was standing outside the bookies unemployed, and I said, there you go. And he said, you know what, you're right, Philly. So as harsh as that sounds, it's no disrespect to soccer. I played both, and it's not just because I play GAA now at a certain level, but in terms of the culture of Gaelic football, it's really strong. There's a massive, it's the biggest network, I would say, in this country right now, Gaelic football is. And there's that support chain around you.
So that support chain you're mentioning as well, so you had to go back and do your leaving cert, didn't you? Were they there to help you along that way, or did that come from you, or did that come from your family, or was it the club, or was it the county involved?
Ballymun it's the club, Ballymun Kickhams, is developed through 2 communities, Glasnevin and Ballymun. And
Paddy Christie was heavily involved with that, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the coach all the way up. So Paddy would have he would have seen that the both communities can rub off each other.
Yeah.
You know, the little bit of energy madness that the Ballymun lads had, and the education and the drive that the Glasnevin kids had. So that rubbed off on us. So I got to a stage where I matured in life, and I said, right, I actually want to go back and do a degree because I've seen all these guys do it. I was in Dublin changing rooms at development ages, and they were all doing degrees and I kind of got to the stage where I said, I want to do this. I want to prove to myself that I can go and do this. And I went and asked Paddy Christie, what do I do? How do I actually do it? Like in school, I wasn't very academic, wasn't even thinking that way. And him and Ian Robertson, who was another Dublin player and Ballymun Kickham's player, they set me down and said, you were able to do this, no problem. We'll link you in with DCU. Then I met with Niall Moyna, who was head of the Gaelic football team down there, and he's involved in sports science. And they just gave me the 2 processes. Well, you wait till you're a mature student, or you go back and repeat your leaving cert. And at that stage, I bought a car, and I was stuck with that loan, and I was absolutely broke. I said to my parents, I'm going to go back and repeat my leaving cert. I'm not going to wait till I'm 23. And they said, look, we'll look after you, roof over your head, food on the table. And I said, right, okay. I said, but I need to get money somewhere. So I went back and repeated my leaving cert, driving into school with this fancy car. I'm sure the students were saying to me, is this either a teacher or a drug dealer coming in? And I was broke. I had like €2 a day to live off, and I'd buy a bottle of water, and I'd buy a long pan at the start of the week with a packet of ham, and I'd make the sandwiches. And that perseverance was massive for me, because I got to the stage where I got asked to teach a kids team in an attic space in Ballymun Kickham's. It wasn't a gym. That's how it all began. I was absolutely broke, and I was earning €60 a week, which then 4 women asked me after that, see you training teams up there, would you train us? And that escalated into where I am today in terms of business.
You seem quite proactive. You seem to, like, you enjoy and you embrace these types of challenges. Obviously the sport element is central to that, and the Gaelic, but then all these other branches off it, so like the nutritional side, the fitness side, it's obviously something that it's not just going to be during your career. You're obviously going to kick off in different directions and keep it going.
Yeah, I'm excited for building platforms. Yeah. So I've had sport as a platform to help others, and that actually came about, strangely enough, when a player on the pitch abused me brother. Like,
was it?
Yeah, and it kind of slipped out of my mouth. I was so frustrated that day. It slipped out of my mouth and I started speaking about my brother's addiction, you know. And from that day I understood that I had a purpose in life. You know, that the impact that had when people were contacting me, asking to speak about my experiences and thanking me for, you know, coming out and saying, you know, my brother was an addict and talking about them issues. That was the day that I realised that I constantly have to build platforms, and sport as a platform won't be around forever. So I'm planning for the next platform.
Yeah, one of them you're going in today is the venture in Mountjoy Prison. I've seen the documentary recently, which I found fascinating in terms of the interaction that you have with them, and clearly the joy and satisfaction that they get out of it. But it was also very evident that you get it as well.
Yeah.
How did that come about, that one?
Basically, I was playing a match against Vincent's in the semi-final of the club championship. We got beaten, and there was, after the match, kids come onto the pitch and you sign a couple of jerseys. And this guy got over the fence, came over to me, and I was kind of a bit strange. It's like, this fella's not asking for his autograph. He's a bit old for it. And he says, "Look, I'm the governor of Mountjoy. Would you come in and do a talk?" And
that was it, was it?
Yeah, Governor Mullins came over. Eddie Mullins came over to me and said, "Will you come in?" Because
he was aware of your business ventures and what you were doing, and he just thought that would be.
Well, for me, I was really interested in working with him because I'd worked with other people like him, but I didn't know what he was like there. But when I spoke to him after a couple of meetings with him, I was like, I can learn from this guy, and I love being around people that I can learn. Another guy that I would have been very similar to him is Trevor Crowley, who's with Bowles and Shamrock Rovers. I worked with him. I just constantly learn from these type of people. But anyway, he came, I went in and done the talk, and he said, "Philly, I don't know how many people is going to be here. The cells open at a certain time. You could have 5, you could have 10. The place was packed."
Was it?
And I was like, right, great. This is a good sign. There's a good crew here. They all sat down and went, "Oh, damn, I can't tell the story that I was about to tell because there was 5 of my mates in the story sitting in front of me." So they were the standards of my culture, and I was probably, well, potentially be one of them, or be on drugs, or end up dead, or commit crime. So I felt...
It was literally 5 familiar faces right in front of you.
Sitting in front of me, So for me, I started off, I'd done the talk, had a kind of a relatable impact with these guys. They asked could I come back in and do some gym sessions with them, did that. And then I went back to the governor and I said, "Look, there's something special here." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, there's good cultural things happening that we need to shine the light on. If we can develop a programme or a movement that can change the culture in the prison, wouldn't that be amazing? Nowhere in the world has done that. Like, that when there's drugs in the prison, that people aren't taking drugs based on choice. So that's the big problem. We're never going to get rid of drugs outside of prison and inside of prison. But if we can get into individuals and change their self-beliefs, they will make the choice not to take drugs, and will change the norm then.
Yeah.
So it's very engrossing when you're in there. If you want to learn about human beings, go to Mountjoy for a couple of days.
Really?
It's powerful, like, you know.
Yeah. Whereas people, so twice a week you're in there, Tuesdays, Thursdays.
Yeah, we're only in there like...
how many are you taking now a week? Like what? There must be a huge clamour for...
How many do we have in the programme? The programme, I don't know if I can course. Can I course?
Yeah,
the programme's called the Unfucked Movement, right? And Unfucked stands for, the way you spell it, it's UNFUCCCKED. And the CCC stands for Culture, Community and Change. Right? So it's basically changing the individual self-belief, so when they reintegrate in society, that they have a different external environment. Right? So it's called restorative justice. So prison, when you commit a crime, you're punished by, they take your liberty, but there's a second part to that, which is rehabilitation. And it's not really there at the minute. In other words, if these people get back out in society and they haven't changed within the prison, they'll reoffend. It'll cost the country millions. The consumers, I think it costs us 422 million at the minute from just petty crime in terms of robbing and stealing. So it's incredible that we haven't really focused on that enough. And some people go, well, Philly, you're helping drug dealers and murders and all these things. But I'm helping them so that when they get out, that there's not more victims.
Yeah.
So there's not victims like my brother was, or certain families have already been victims from.
Is there any challenges in there?
All the time. The culture is based on fear. It's based on ego. You know, years and years ago in Mountjoy, I believe, you know, people would have solved a lot of problems by just having a bit of a fisticuff, and that was it. Now people are getting stabbed.
And it's gone up a notch.
But you've got good people in management in Mountjoy that understand that there is a different way to do things.
You mentioned someone there, Trevor Crowley, who you've learned off, and you were in with him with Shamrock Rovers a few years ago, doing the strength and conditioning side of things there. In terms of the sports, the difference, and I know you've been involved with Camogie as well, so the different sports, the different requirements for the athlete. So you as a full-back, as a corner-back, and me as a centre midfielder or winger. So I think when I first started, and probably until the last 5-7 years, it was all very generic.
Yeah.
Whereas now it needs to be so specific, doesn't it? I presume you're not doing the exact same as the likes of Mannion and O'Callaghan in terms of the training. There's individual programmes, certainly gym-based as well. But what did you take from the football side of being at Shamrock Rovers, or from that, looking at that sport in particular?
When I was with Shamrock Rovers, the problem we had was that there was probably a negative culture there. That's probably, you see, unfortunately, you kind of inherit players, whether they have good attitude or bad attitude. And we inherited a few players that had bad attitude in Trevor's first year. Then he brought players in with names and stuff like that. And when you work with Shamrock Rovers, there's an expectation that you have to be successful no matter what time you have. That might have changed a little bit now. But the fourth highest budget in the league, hadn't won anything in maybe 2 or 3 seasons, and hadn't won, apart from the kind of the success that Michael O'Neill hadn't won that in a very long time. But the expectations were up through the roof.
Huge, yeah.
But when working with Shamrock Rovers, there wasn't a culture in the club, right? So we went.
That's strange for you, coming from a Dublin environment where it's engrossing you, and I presume Ballymun Kickham's, in terms of your club, it's just from all the way up that you have that culture, you have that pride, and you step into a Rovers, and I would say it would be quite common, because I've often made the references about rugby, the provinces, obviously with Ireland, Gaelic, it's the same, but with football, it's very, very different.
Yeah, like Shamrock Rovers is very similar to the international setup right now, right? The base of the fans and everybody around the football circle are getting kind of pissed off at FAI and pissed off at the football and looking to point the finger at other things. And then they're looking at, it has to be this style of football, which I don't disagree with. It has to be put more into the electricity league. We have to, have a development strategy through. There's no culture. There's absolutely no culture. You can have all the strategy you want, but if you don't have a culture, the way players' behaviours, their values, the way they abide by things, that doesn't matter. Once you come up against another country that has good cultures, you will always get beaten, right? So, when in the past Ireland has been successful, they've had players that have understood a bit of a culture about the country and what they've done. And I'm not saying it's the players' fault, I'm definitely not. But there's no probably culture with that I know of, speaking to international players, especially before the Euros there recently. The culture is probably not there. If you can put a culture structure in place, I believe that could have a positive impact. No difference to what Shamrock Rovers needed.
So what was the process then? Because I would have been involved coaching-wise with some of the underage teams, and one of the things we would have tried to implement would be, you're getting a group of 20 lads together, young lads, 16, 17, 18-year-old lad, the age group. What we would have done would have been, you give them ownership of it, you make them accountable, you give them the responsibility. One of the first questions we asked one of the underage teams was, what do you think the perception of Ireland is? Because we were going to be going and playing against Germany and Spain and Italy, all these teams. And then a few shouts around the room, pride, tackles, but one of them said technically brutal. We were like, well, do you think you're technically built? And we were like, no, we don't. So we're going to keep that fire. We're going to keep that. So we created in those underage teams that togetherness, but that, look, this is what we are. This is what we stand for. And I think you're right. It's not across the board. And we've certainly gone away from it in terms of our national team in the last couple of years in particular. But with Shamrock Rovers as an example, club-wise, managers are going in and it's the time. That culture, that ethos, that philosophy, whatever way you want to put it, has to come with results. And it's getting that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the only way you can do it with the changeover of management in soccer, you need to have somebody in behind the scenes that's developing it, that's there all the way through, and that has to be given time, right? Because time is the most important thing. Because if you have a manager that brings in a culture and he leaves with that culture, you're kind of back to square one, which happens in terms of GAA, happens all the time around the country. You look at all the teams in Leinster, a lot of the teams in Leinster, and their lifetime span of the managers, they keep changing. Whereas we've had Jim Gavin now for a period of time, which has helped us build and build and build, right? So that's important that these kids, and it's happening right now in Shamrock Rovers, by the way. So they are putting.
Yeah, they have. Yeah,
we went, believe it or not, and it kind of started when Trevor was in there, because we went to Ballymun, we looked at their framework and their structure and stuff like that. And when we went back, we started implementing it. So we'd start looking at ex-players coming in and taking teams and stuff like that. And that's what they're doing. It's blossoming now because of that, and they're giving the current management team a good bit of time, which is important for them to grow. But for me, I think it's that saying that, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know, if the problem I would see is that there's a lot of money and time spent in getting badges in soccer. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And sometimes a lot of coaches will think this is the only way we should do things. And if they just expand it into different sports, it could help massively.
Yeah, there's a lot of my friends who have retired, excuse me, and they get put off because of not so much the badges, the licenses, because I think that the structure that you get from them can be beneficial, but it's most certainly not all about them. Yeah. It's the experiences that you can bring. Some of the traditional managers, and I don't know whether it's the same in Gaelic, but some of the old school type managers I would have had, like Sam Allardyce, Trapattoni, they walk into a room, they own it, they've got presence, they can manage a group of players, they can own the room, no problem. Whereas you're going on these courses and it's great, you put on your presentations and you can go out and you can take a session with so many players and on attack and on transitions, blah blah blah, all this type of thing. But you learn more, probably not more, you learn as much on these courses from the people you're on the courses with, from their experiences. So like us spending half an hour today, you pick a couple of things out and you go, that was really good, blah blah, and you going to Malmo getting these infrastructures in place. What's the process in Gaelic then? So Jim Gavin on his route to where he's gone to now doesn't have to go through all those courses, obviously, I presume, does he?
No. Like, I mean, you spoke about giving them young lads ownership and responsibility. That's the Dublin, that hasn't been a secret. That's the Dublin culture. That's a player-centric led culture. That players, you know, when you talk about managers owning the changing room, I think that's important. But what's more important is that you have a manager that gets the best out of your players. Yeah. And sometimes when you have a manager that comes in that wants to own, the priority is to own the change room, there's a disconnect, right? There's that kind of, you lose that approachability to go and say things to management, and I think a manager, one of the best traits a manager could have is being a good listener, like, you know. So, and I think probably the international scene hasn't had that for a while, like. So being able to, and I believe Stephen Kenny could be a really good man manager, coach that listens well, because he's had players in Dundalk where their backs have been against the wall when they first started to create that success, and he's got the best out of them.
They created a structure at that club, and it took a little bit of time, but he created that. So that club now has an identity. Whereas for years and years, obviously, it didn't. And you see other clubs, and the League of Ireland is very difficult in terms of player contracts. There's the constant kind of lure of going across the water and earning more money if the lads really shine in the League of Ireland. But he has created a culture and a philosophy. And I think that's probably what they're going to be doing with Mick
I'd love to see, has he a blueprint of what his culture is? I'd love to see that. I don't know if he has. If he has, I'd love to see it, because I think it'd be really intriguing. I know guys have walked in there. I've spoke to players that have played under him, and I tried to get a little bits out of them to see if they've got a blueprint of how they've done it, and I don't know if they have. I think it's one of them things where they've had a group of players that were kind of like, what are we doing in our career? What have we achieved? And let's just go after it. And then they've got a sniff of belief, and they've built on that and built on it and built on it. And then every time they've brought players in, it's added to it. It's added the energy, and then the success is kind of... Yeah, and then you have to remember, see the Airtricity League, I find it very easy to break down. Like, you have 2 top teams, generally, and then 2 top teams do well because, first of all the players want to go to them because they're probably getting good money, the best money in the league. They'd probably play in Europe. And, you know, then what happens is the other teams below that, they will always struggle to keep building, because the players will essentially, if they have a good player, they'll go to England. Look at Bowles this year. They have 2 lads now in England that were with them. They had 3 lads that have left for certain reasons. Dan Casey going down to Cork and stuff like that. So you'll have that, but it's about developing your brand, right? That's what the Airtricity, that's the missing piece, I feel. If you're not the top 2, develop your brand, right? So that players, like, they won't, money will come down, will have a big factor to it, but ultimately, I love playing here.
Yeah, you'll attract the right players.
It's, you know, I think that's very important.
With Dublin then, in terms of that philosophy, that ownership, I was lucky to spend a little bit of time and watching you try, and the first thing that struck me was the atmosphere. It's quite hard to describe it, and I don't think it was a full-on session, the one I went in with. It would have been more low-key, so maybe that was a little bit to do with it. But the atmosphere was, you could tell it was a really nice, friendly environment that everybody enjoyed being at, staff, obviously players. But when it became training time, it was like, bang, we're on this.
Yeah.
It was hard to put your finger on it, because as part of my coaching badges and licence, I've travelled to different environments, different sports, was in with the Ireland rugby team, and very different atmosphere with them. Where it was kind of, and we mentioned the word ownership, it was as if nothing was really said from staff-wise, but when training started, the whistle went from the fitness coach, wherever, bang.
Yeah.
We're on it. Is that just ways have got to?
Yeah. It's one of them things where, as soon as it kind of has kind of steps to it. Like, as soon as you drive in the grounds, you're kind of right. You start to leave everything behind, everything in life. You try to leave that at the gate, and then you do your little preparations. That everybody has their own individual preparation. You're getting your head right. You're getting your body right. You're doing your activation stuff, and then you're looking for gains. You're looking for, right, what am I going to do today that's going to help me now play at a certain level in terms of my performance in a match. And then you have everybody pulling you along. You know, there's some days that you might struggle, some days psychologically or physically you might struggle, but these boys are pulling you along. So going back to that player-centric culture. And do you know what? Sometimes it's hard to leave stuff behind. Like, I struggled the last 2 years with my dad's illness. But to have them boys pull you along, that's the only reason why I was probably still there.
It's like, what does it mean? Like, I grew up watching Dublin training Parnell Park Tuesdays and Thursdays going down, and that would have been early 90s, before obviously winning it for the first time in a long time in 95, wasn't it? 95, yeah. And watching like Paul Clark and Curran and Keith Barr, and I supported 3 teams as a kid. Ireland was first, Dublin and Liverpool were like close.
You know, I'm an Everton fan.
Are you an Everton fan? Yeah. This isn't going well, is it?
Vince is at Liverpool.
I'm not that bothered about Liverpool anymore, to be fair. Or Vincent's, to be fair.
I'm the same with Everton, don't worry.
But like, I just, anybody that wore that shirt, Ireland, like random Ireland players, and I look back now and I think, oh my God, I worshipped him. He's got about like 3 caps or 5 caps, or just because he scored 1 goal. Like, this player called Bernie Slavin, like, played and he was centre forward. He had a handful of caps, and it was the same with Dublin. Anybody who wore that shirt, you just had on a pedestal. Now, I think when I was playing for Ireland, sometimes you'd forget about that, but you're engrossed in life in Dublin. Like, how much do you feel that? How much pressure do you feel with that?
The pressure,
nice pressure.
Very little pressure, because it's kind of, you're kept grounded a lot. You know, you're kept grounded a lot. I'll give you
internally
and externally, like both, because I am very fortunate. I've got to a stage where I realised that putting on the jersey makes a lot of people happy. Myself first of all, and then the impact it has on other people is amazing. A lot of times people ask, how can you stay motivated? You're going for 5 in a row. How do you know, the motivation is really deep for me. It's really special in that my dad's last All-Ireland was last year, and that was a huge special gift that these guys, everybody from the kit man to the management team to the players to everybody, my family, they all gave me that gift, to give me that little bit of support to get me to the stage where he could see my last All-Ireland. And I know that happens for other people. So there's people in that stadium that don't have don't have time in their life. They could be very ill. When we win an All-Ireland, we go to the hospitals the next morning, and you see very ill kids. So how can you not enjoy that time, especially when you've got probably about 10 years, if you're lucky, maybe 12. If you're Stephen Cluxton, you've about 40 years.
Still going.
Yeah, but why, you have to grasp it. You have to take that time when you have it, because it's the most
When
important.
did you start to really appreciate it? 'Cause you hear most sports people, I think, when they're younger, they maybe take it for granted at different levels. When did you kind of think along those lines, where this isn't going to last forever, and it's been a really special period in Dublin GAA history? So when was it when you thought, yeah, I need to enjoy every single minute of this?
There was a light bulb moment in 2013. I had the cup and I was bringing it to a youth club to do a talk, and I walked into me house, and all these kids came over and asked me for my autograph, and I was like, cool, no bother. I went back into the house, got a bit of lunch, came back down, and one of the brothers of the kids that was signing the jersey came over and says, I missed you, can I get an autograph? And I said, yeah, no problem. And he said, are you famous? Are you famous? Looked up at me, and I was like, oh, what do I say here? And before I even said yes or no, he said, you must be, you're on telly. And I said, oh yeah, I am. Yeah. And then he said, but hold on, you can't be famous because you're from Ballymun. Right? Yeah. So I sat down on the pat, right? There was me, the kid, and the cup for about 10 minutes. And I'm sure cars driving by were going, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is crazy, like, yeah. I don't know what I gave that kid that day. I don't know. I hope I gave him something, right? Some little bit of a boost of encouragement from something I said, right? But I felt great. I felt amazing. I felt 3 foot taller. And I remember speaking to a friend of mine who's a personal development coach, and I said it to him, I told him that story, and he said, right, he said, that's what you need to do in life. He said, get as many people as you can on the biggest path as possible and go after that. Because when you're dead and gone, that's what you'll be remembered for. Not how many All-Irelands you have, or what house you have, or what car you have, or how much money you have, but how much energy you give people. So that's when it tweaked that sport can be a very powerful thing in terms of a platform to help others. So every chance and every bit of time we have, I'm going to use it.
Listen, that's a nice way to end it. We could chat here for the next few hours.
Yeah.
No problem at all, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Hopefully get you in again some stage. And
definitely.
You'll be back training after Christmas?
January, yeah. Team holiday on the 28th to the 9th. So
nice, well deserved.
Looking forward to that.
And then straight back into it.
That's it.